Welcome back, everybody. So today's going to be something a little bit different. I'm a hobby watchmaker in my spare time. So today I think we're going to look at wristwatches. I'm going to be looking at some videos from Wristwatch Revival, which is a YouTube channel that is quite good and it's gotten quite popular over the years. And it should have some good clips that we can look at and try and figure out where the datum for these watch parts might be. So let's watch this video and then I'll cut to my tablet. So he's unscrewing this, and this is called the plate. You might also hear something like this be called a bridge. So he pries it off and he's going to show us a view of the bottom. Okay, so what's happening here? So we've got a flat plane that is interacting with this flat plane, or flat face I should call it. And then we've got two dowels which go into the dowel holes. And then this hole and this hole are locating, basically, or they're helping constrain these two. So this wheel, and then this is the mainspring barrel. So here's the artist's rendition of those two parts. And let's just have a look at how they assemble together. So this top plate got dropped onto here, and in this view, in the side view, it would have come like this. And then this surface here would have controlled the rotation as well as the up and down. So it's locked here and it's able to move side to side. So it's able to do this, and then the dowels would locate it in this orientation, or in this in these degrees of freedom. So now it's fully constrained based off of this top surface as well as the two dowels. So based off of that, what are the datums? And I'll give you 1 second. So to me, it makes sense that the datums are, of course, the features that constrain the part. And in that case, that is the top face, as well as the dowel holes or the dowel pins. So how might one call out these datums in order of precedence? Well, in the assembly, the watchmaker is going to make sure that this plate is lying flat. So let's say the dowels are at a bit of an angle, like so, relative to the plate. They won't install it like this, and this is an exaggerated version, but it will not be installed at some angle like this. They are going to force that plate flat. So to me, that tells me that this face and the mating face are probably the primary datums, at least in this part of the assembly. So how might one tolerance these? Well, this is a discontinuous surface, so even though you might be tempted to call it out as a flatness, you actually have to call it out as 2 times a surface profile to something, because flatnesses are individual features. So one part of this might end up down here and really flat, and the other might end up here and really flat, but that in the assembly is actually not very useful, because then this entire plate is going to end up at an angle. So we'll call it out as a profile 2 times, and that controls both of them simultaneously. Then we'll give that the primary datum A, and then we'll do the same thing on this. Mating parts should have datum reference frames and orders of precedence that more or less mirror each other typically. So we'll do something similar here. This is one of the nice things about doing an entire assembly at once, is you often can steal tolerances and datum schemes from a part that you've already put the work into. So those are the primary. I think the secondary on both, because it's being located by these dowels, should be the dowels. So how might we call those out? Well, maybe we'll say 2 times, and let's say it's a 1 millimeter hole. It's got some size tolerance. We want to control probably the perpendicularity of the hole as well as the position relative to each other. So maybe we'll just roll those both into a position tolerance. 2 times some position of something, and we will relate it to datum A. And then easy enough for us just to steal that. We'll go 2 times 1 plus minus something relative to A. And then because these features are constraining the assembly, we'll give it a secondary datum, or we'll give it a datum. And what are we doing with these datums? Well, we are controlling the location of these holes. So these holes, as well as probably these profiles to some degree, because these profiles are cut out as clearance for the parts that go in there. But let's look at the holes. The holes are going to have some sort of size tolerance, and they are going to be positioned relative to AB. And then same over here. All right, let's go look at another part of the watch. Okay, so now we're going to look at this wheel. So it gets placed with the pivot, which is this long pointy bit, into a hole in a ruby. And then a plate is placed on top of it, and again we line the other pivot on the other side with another ruby hole. So once again, here's the artist rendition. I've done the rubies in red because it felt appropriate. And then this is the wheel, and this is the part that everyone thinks of when they think of the inside of a watch. This is the smaller gear that's on top of the wheel, or below the wheel sometimes, that you can't quite see. And then this is the staff with the pivots at each end. So what are we trying to control? Typically, the jewel holes are positioned so that the wheels engage with the pivots properly. So there will be a mating pivot, or sorry, the wheels engage with the pinions properly. So there will be a mating pinion, one of these smaller gears that engages with this wheel. So we need to control the left and right, the rotation to ensure the teeth are engaging properly, as well as up down. And what is controlling each of those? So up and down is controlled by these shoulders. Left right is controlled by the pivots, and rotation, angular rotation, is also controlled by the pivots. So with that in mind, what are the datums? So the gut reaction that some people might have is that this bottom surface is the primary datum because it might align this thing or keep it perpendicular to the jewel. But as I showed in the how it's constrained part a minute ago, is that actually these pivots are what's doing the rotational clocking. The shoulders really only control the up-down movement. So it actually makes more sense to have these pivots, these 2 pivots, be the primary datums for the assembly, or for the part. But how do you call out these 2 pivots? You might think, oh, I'll use a continuous feature on it, but the spirit of the standard seems to imply that you don't use a continuous feature for 2 features separated by extra material. It's more for things that are separated by a gap. Like let's say this, if there was a groove here, this might be considered a continuous feature because it was machined in one operation and then a gap was added. So I think that's sort of what the intent is in the standard. I think you could argue that people would understand what you meant if you did put, let's say, 2 times whatever, let's say these are 0.1, and then a continuous feature symbol, and then put like a straightness tolerance. I think people would understand what you meant, but let's assume that that is not what we want to do. Maybe what we do is we say, let's say a hole of size of 0.1. This is a size of 0.1. And then maybe we say something weird like put a true position of something, and then we say a note to coaxial 0.1 millimeter diameters or something like that. So we're controlling these two, and then we can call that datum A. Or another way we could do it is say that this has a true position of something relative to A, and then this has a true position of something relative to B, and actually call this out as A and this out as B. So there's a couple ways you could do this. They all kind of feel a little bit gross to me right now. I'd have to think a little bit more about it. But the important thing is that these pivots are absolutely the primary datums. So what would the secondary datums be? I would say the secondary datums would be both of these shoulders. That's a little bit weird. Why do we have two sort of secondary datums in the assembly? Well, it's because this wheel needs to engage with its mating pinion when this assembly is all the way up and all the way down. Based on that, maybe we say something like this. We'll go give this a perpendicularity of something relative to A dash B, so that's essentially treating these two features as the same datum. And then we'll do the same thing down here. We'll say perpendicularity of something to A dash B. And then both of these will get their own datum. The other way you could do it is you could separate these by some amount, or you could call out a distance between the two, and then say that the midplane of the two must be perpendicular to something to A dash B, and then give that the datum. So maybe that's the datum C instead. So now that we've got our angular degrees of freedom taken care of by our AB, and then our up-down degree of freedom taken up by C, then we can say this shoulder, which is sort of the shoulder that we're trying to control. And I'll try and extend that. This makes it tricky having it in an assembly. I'll say that this shoulder is maybe a profile of something relative to A dash B, and then some distance from datum C. So that video was a little bit of a different flavor. If people liked it, let me know. I think it was a bit disorganized. It could certainly be improved in the future. If you do enjoy it and do enjoy the GD&T content, definitely like and subscribe. I'll try and post every week. And then also go check out Wristwatch Revival. His stuff is great. He does long form content on watchmaking. He helped me get into the hobby, or his videos got me into the hobby. And they're great for just putting on in the background and having some background noise. Anyways, have a good one.